Okay, here's a thought. What if there was like a personal operating manual for your life? Something condensed into these really potent, bite-sized bits of wisdom.
Interesting idea.
We'll be touching on quite a range. Things like avoiding regret, embracing innovation, even the surprising truth about art, the power of writing, and, how to deal with the age of AI.
It's quite a mix.
It is. It's this fascinating collection of personal philosophies, almost like a series of, intellectual challenges or provocations.
Well, what's really insightful, I think, is how these entries, even though they're so concise, manage to touch on these really fundamental aspects of, human thinking, creativity, our whole relationship with knowledge now.
Right.
If you connect it to the bigger picture, it's sort of a guide for living intentionally, especially when we're just drowning in information.
Absolutely. And it kicks off right at the foundation, doesn't it? How we approach our lives.
Yeah.
Have you ever caught yourself saying, well, at least I did that, or maybe at least I didn't do that?
Oh, sure. All the time. It's a classic justification, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's often used to justify choices or maybe inaction or sort of soften the blow of a missed opportunity.
Well, Dynaxiom 3301 basically says, avoid an at least life.
Okay.
The core idea is about actively choosing a path that means you don't need that justification later on. It's not about what you can say you at least did to feel better about regret, but living with enough intention that ideally the regret isn't really there in the first place. It sets a really strong foundation for everything else that follows about being deliberate.
So, if we're aiming to live without those at least moments, how do we actually push boundaries? How do we innovate? Dynaxiom 3302 says innovation requires allowing oneself to be innovative. Sounds simple, maybe?
It does sound simple, but I think it gets at something really important.
Yeah.
The Dynaxiom points out that people often want cutting-edge ideas, but then they kind of pull their punches. They get timid.
Why?
Well, the fear, right. The fear of being seen as weird or eccentric.
Oh.
So the insight here is that real innovation often comes from exploring those ideas that feel a bit more eccentric, even if it's uncomfortable. You have to push past that fear of looking weird to actually break new ground.
Okay, that makes sense. And when it comes to figuring out what you really think about something, is just talking it through enough? Dynaxiom 3303 has a really interesting take on this.
Yeah, this is a crucial distinction it makes. Talking can feel like thinking, right? Thinking aloud.
Sure.
But the Dynaxiom argues pretty strongly that writing, and especially editing, is just so much better for really knowing what's going on in your own mind.
How so?
Well, the source mentions how writing has evolved, handwritten, typed, dictated, transcribed, even stuff generated by an LLM, a large language model.
Right.
And each form has its own feel, its own characteristics. But the main goal, it says, is to actually say what we meant to say. That process genuinely enriches us.
Okay.
And the key part, the really vital step, is the editing or the rewriting after you get the first draft down. It's that process of refining your thoughts, not just blurting them out.
Gotcha. So writing clarifies thought. But then it's not just how we think, it's also what we choose to think about, and maybe even what we refuse to engage with that really shapes our intellect. This leads us right into Dynaxiom 3304.
Yeah, this is a powerful idea. What we decide is important, or maybe not important, effectively becomes the training set for our lives.
Training set, like for AI.
Exactly like for AI.
Yeah.
Think about a huge library, tens of thousands of books. If you only ever choose to read 5 specific books, or maybe you never go to the library at all, well, that choice forms the foundation of your intellect.
Okay.
The source connects this to potential societal divisions. It observes, for example, that if people refuse to engage with certain ideas, maybe due to really deeply held beliefs like religious ideas or scriptures, this can lead to differing views on intellect itself.
And the consequence?
Well, the Dynaxiom states this can result in division in any country and can lead to civil wars. It's presented as a serious warning in the source about limiting your intellectual inputs.
Wow. Okay. That's heavy.
And we see a parallel now with AI, right? Some people are like, nope, don't want any part of it. Others are diving deep, exploring how it can expand the mind.
Right.
The source actually says they learn something new every day, asking questions of LLMs, trusting their truthiness, basically, that the info is probably mostly right.
Mostly right. What about errors?
The view presented is that potential errors are like finding a few needles in haystacks. It doesn't see them as, a fatal flaw like a fly in the ointment or a chink in the armor. There's enough reliable stuff to work with.
So it challenges us.
Yeah, it challenges you. Are you just focusing on the tiny percentage that might be bad, like only reading those 5 books and ignoring the entire library?
That is a powerful challenge. So, okay, if our choices shape us like that, what happens if we just stop? If we stop choosing to learn, stop engaging with new ideas? Dynaxiom 3305 suggests that without that continued study, our lives just kind of redound to a default mental routine.
Precisely, yeah. The person writing these Dynaxioms mentions having read like 800 books and thousands of articles, this whole personal knowledge base they call their datamo.
Datum, I like that.
Yeah. But even with all that, they say they have to make a real effort to loop back on things, to revisit.
And most people don't.
Most people don't. Or maybe they feel they can't. The source suggests this might be why something like Bible study is appealing for something. It's a convenient way to loop back to something consistent and familiar.
Okay.
And this idea of personal Bibles, which is what these Dynaxioms eventually became, grew out of that same need. It's about revisiting your own insights, your own writings, to actually follow your own advice.
And to compress it.
Yes. To compress knowledge into things you can actually remember and use day to day. There's this quote integrated from something called Light in the Darkness about electronic compression.
Like for digital files.
Deleting the unimportant parts of the data and saving what's left, with the differences being hardly visible or audible, but the amount of data becoming way smaller. And the analogy is powerful. Data is all flab if we don't use it and tone its muscle.
Right.
If we don't actively compress, revisit, and use our knowledge, it just sits there unused, flabby. It doesn't help us.
Tone its muscle. That's a really memorable image. Okay, so we've talked about discipline, cultivating intellect. But what about creativity? That more fluid, maybe less structured side? Dynaxiom 3306 is interesting for anyone who creates things. It says it's okay to, make up a story after you thought you already told it.
Yeah, this one's intriguing, right? Especially with something like writing song lyrics. The source says it's often just wordplay at first.
Okay.
And even when you think you have the final lyric and you sort of know the story, it might actually get clearer later on, over time. It can reveal what you were maybe trying to say all along, even if it felt like nonsense initially. But the important thing for artists, it stresses, is to eventually clarify it enough so it can be communicated.
So you can finally say.
That's what I meant, yeah. The story evolves, even for the creator.
Now, speaking of creating things, Dynaxiom 3307 makes a very clear, very concise statement about AI. It just says, AI doesn't experience spiritual rewards.
Short, but profound, isn't it? While AI can mimic creativity, generate amazing stuff, it doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't have that subjective experience.
Right.
It can't feel pride or satisfaction or that sense of personal growth you get from, real artistic struggle or figuring something out intellectually. Those deeper rewards, the ones you can't really quantify, they seem to remain uniquely human. They're just beyond algorithm.
Okay, that's a clear line.
Yeah.
Now, brace yourself for this next one. Dynaxiom 3308. Art, in its essence, is a form of deceit.
Whoa. Yeah, that one definitely makes you stop and think.
It does. Deceit.
Really?
Well, yeah, especially thinking about contemporary art.
Yeah.
And artists' intentions. They aren't always clear. Sometimes maybe not even to the artists themselves, at least not at first.
Okay.
So they might seem to be saying one thing, but maybe it's actually something else entirely. Or sometimes artists use anonymity, right? So there isn't even someone appearing to make the art.
So it's like being cunning.
Exactly. The source calls it a form of cunning or being crazy like a fox and uses Andy Warhol as a prime example.
There was this lecture mentioned, a Kirk Varnadoe lecture from 2003, talking about how Warhol deliberately played with appearances. He made art that looked easy, almost trivialized invention and individuality, pressing on the nerve of abstraction made easy.
Right, like his soup cans or Brillo boxes.
Yeah, but the lecture argues he found these sneaky ways to get a kind of painterly quality or a sense of grand scale back into his seemingly simple work.
Sneaky ways. Like what?
Okay, so his 1982 camouflage paintings, for instance, they're described as a backdoor route to the style of surrealists like Arp or Miro, or his huge Rorschach ink blot paintings from 1984, like 4 meters high.
Wow.
They resonate with the scale and bravado, the lecture says, of something they're definitely not, like a big abstract expressionist painting by Franz Klein or Robert Motherwell.
So he's played with expectations.
Totally. Doing something profound while appearing not to, or appearing to do something simple or even superficial. That kind of deceit was perfectly Warhol. It tricks the viewer, maybe, into finding a deeper meaning.
That puts a really fascinating spin on it. But does that mean art loses its power to be, genuinely moving or truthful if it's fundamentally deceitful?
That's a great question. I think the Dynaxiom implies the deceit isn't malicious. It's more like cunning misdirection, a stage magician's trick, maybe.
Okay.
It guides you to a new understanding by playing with your perception. It's not about lying, perhaps, but about manipulating how you see things to reveal a hidden layer or achieve a bigger impact.
That makes more sense. Okay, let's bring AI back in. Dynaxiom 3309 offers another really critical distinction. AI is an input, not an output.
This is so important to grasp, I think. Yes, AI can gather information, summarize things, write drafts of emails, essays, blog posts, whatever, right out of the box.
And those look like outputs.
They absolutely look like outputs, of course.
Right.
But the Dynaxiom argues they're not your thoughts. They are the pattern of your thoughts, or maybe the pattern of thoughts it found elsewhere. Meaning, you aren't really in the loop in the same deep way you are when you're wrestling with your own ideas through writing and editing, like we talked about earlier.
Right.
AI gives you a pattern, a starting point, something to react to or shape. It's a tool, but it's not a substitute for your own genuine cognitive output.
Input, not output. Got it.
Okay.
Okay, finally, we land on this really sharp observation about societal trends, especially relevant with AI right now. Dynaxiom 3310 says, new popular trends are very often like shouting fire in a theater. But instead of rushing for the exits, they stampede to the entrances.
Yeah, you can absolutely see that with generative AI, can't you?
Definitely.
There's this mention of Nate Hagens doing a video riff on this, and he described like 8 archetypes of AI users.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he suggests most people probably fall into the flexor archetype.
The flexor, what drives them?
According to Hagens, it's things like insecurity, maybe addiction, or just that desire for approval, similar to chasing likes on social media. So flexors use AI mainly to show off, to make a statement. Their goal isn't really about being more productive or even enjoying it that much. It's about looking clever or bright or creative.
Like being part of the cool kids.
Pretty much. And the concern is this could become a really big category, amplifying those behaviors we already see with, say, the tech bros hyping things up on LinkedIn. It's less about the actual usefulness and more about just rushing towards an entrance of the newest, shiniest thing, just to be seen there.
Stampeding to the entrance. Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us? We've gone from avoiding that at least life to understanding art as a kind of clever deceit to seeing AI as input. These Dynaxioms seem to offer a sort of blueprint for engaging more deeply, right, with ourselves and the world.
Yeah, it feels like it's all about being more deliberate. Deliberate in what you choose to learn, what you create, maybe even what you consciously decide to ignore.
Which really brings up that question you raised earlier.
Yeah. Right. In this world just flooded with information, what training set are you actively building for your own